Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Ari Lax, and this week we're going to have a little fun. So, recently, a relatively old legacy combo deck has been putting up a couple finishes on the SCG Tour and the Classics, and that deck is Belcher. So, for those of you unfamiliar with this deck, let's read the text on Goblin Char Belcher. So, you reveal cards until you hit a land, and you cannon your opponent for the number of cards revealed, double if you hit a mountain. What if you only have one land in your deck? What if you remove the land from your deck with Land Grant? What if it's a mountain, so all you need to do is reveal 10 cards to Charbelcher, and they just lose the game? Or, if there's no land left in your deck, you reveal like 40 and they're very dead. So Charbelcher is kind of the quintessential legacy turn one, kill you or die trying combo deck. But it gets a little bit of a bad rap because it's actually a lot more threatening and flexible than I think people will give it credit for. So the reason for that is the backup kill condition, which is empty the Warrens. So for those of you not familiar with this card, it is the storm kill condition for a lot of red decks throughout Magic's history. Makes 2 goblins for each storm copy, but notably it can't be countered because of the way the storm mechanic works. So storm triggers separately from the spell, and then you just get copies, and you can counter a copy with Force of Will, but you're not going to counter them all. So you end up in spots where your opponent has to think about, well, can I beat and empty the Warrens? Do I have to counter this ritual? And you can bait a lot of Force of Wills and make your opponent, even if they have the answer, they still have to cast it at the right time. And there's a lot of ways to make your opponent not able to do that. For example, Burning Wish. So you can Burning Wish for Empty the Warrens. So if you cast Burning Wish, their counterspell is going to be useless unless they use it. So imagine you have a hand that makes 6 mana, cast Burning Wish, they counter it, then you cast Charbelcher. And maybe one of those mana sources is a Taiga. Maybe one of them's a Chrome Mox. Maybe you draw 2 more mana sources the next 2 turns and your opponent loses before they do anything that matters. Worth noting, Goblin Charbelcher is nicely just barely out of range of Abrupt Decay. So there's just a lot of games that in theory, your opponent should just be able to force will your thing and win, and that just doesn't happen. So to go through the core of the deck, we've got our 11 win conditions. Burning Wish has primarily Empty the Warrens to go for, but you got a nice little selection. A Diminishing Returns just to rebuy if everything else fails. Reverent Silence. There's other like interaction with permanents, but this one specifically actually relevant because the enchantments you might need to kill against specifically Enchantress, like Solitary Confinement, aren't actually cards that stop you from casting spells. For example, like against Death and Taxes, if they have a Thalia in play, you're not going to be able to even get to the point where you kill it. Against, Chalice of the Void, it's going to be hard to get to the point where you're actually even casting your Shattering's Spree after Burning Wishing. But against Enchantress, all you have to do is Burning Wish for Reverent Silence and destroy all their permanents. Reforge the Soul, you have a different rebuy in case you don't have blue mana. As you can tell, this deck doesn't have a lot of sideboard slots to really work with that it cares about. Tendrils of Agony, some games you can actually chain off some Burning Wish stuff. It doesn't happen often. Infernal Tutor to find a Charbelcher if you need a sure instant kill if you have a bunch of mana. Reanimate, actually a thing you can do to Reanimator players sometimes is, they go like Careful Study, discard their Gristlebrand, and then you have a Gristlebrand. So it's just a short way to kill a specific deck, similar to how Reverend Silence kills a specific deck. Empty the Warrens, I mentioned. And then Goblin War Strike. There are double Burning Wish hands where you actually just War Strike them after emptying and then attack and kill them in 1 hit instead of 2. And then we've got our anti-blue cards. So I've a bit heavier on the Pyroblasts than the lists that have been performing. And the reason for that is I don't like having to pass the turn with Xanted Swarm sometimes. So a lot of the times I've found that just the way the mana works, like you exposing your Taiga, sometimes you end up down the mana. Sometimes you have like, Lotus Petal and you need the red. It doesn't math out always that Xanted Swarm is actually the castable card. And then also, it's also very possible that you just assemble 8 mana on turn 1 and you want to do your thing with Pyroblast back. So I've just been like generally unimpressed with Xanted Swarm, except against very specific decks where you're going to be facing no answers to Xanted Swarm, but way too much hate for just Pyroblast. where Swarm is just going to kill them. There's some like land still decks that occasionally pop up in the format. Um, but I do have a ton of Pyroblasts, and that's another aspect where this deck kind of excels in post-4 games is that, first of all, you're not shaving any specific card. You kind of cut like a Burning Wish, a Seething Song, a Lion's Eye Diamond, a Manamorphose, or whatever, and you fit 4 cards in. Um, but you have a lot of lines that people don't usually see where you like Taiga, cast Tinderwall, and then also the next turn you're just up extra mana that you untap with Taiga and Tinderwall and play. You're starting with 3 mana instead of the initial basic 2 or whatever that would normally be. And you can just kind of build these turns where you just do a ton of different things and have Pyroblast up and you just kill your opponent. Moving back to the main deck to the cards that are all identical. Worth noting, you need a lot of starter mana. So this is mana that produces mana, or spells that produce mana from no other mana invested. So you have 20 ways for that. You can cut a Chrome Mox. Multiples of this card is pretty bad. You've got another 22 mana sources that take a mana to start up, but get you somewhere from there. So Rites, Tinderwalls, Desperates, and Paretics, and then Lion's Eye Diamonds and Seething Songs. Lion's Eye Diamond notably only good with Burning Wish or Charbelcher. It doesn't get you anywhere started despite costing 0. And then you've got the filler. Taxing Probe's good because it lets you kind of figure out how you're going to sort of weave your spells around theirs. And Manamorphose is kind of a wash. It helps some of the wish cards, but really it's not that important. It adds Storm for Empty the Warrens. Realistically, these cards are just kind of there. You don't want too many of them because it makes your hands hard to like suss out what you're doing. So you keep a hand that you can keep a hand that tries to find mana. It's harder to keep a hand that tries to find a threat because you only have 11. So like if you have 2 probes in your hand, you just don't know what's going to happen. You probably have to keep, but you still don't know. Anyways, that's Belcher. I'll probably get in more than the normal number of rounds just because my matches will take 5 turns or whatever. But looking forward to. I think there's 2 ways this goes. There's either the way where it's very fun and I just kill my opponents on turn 1 and get to cackle about it, or I get to showcase some of the tricky aspects of the deck and just generally legacy combo and how you can always do a little bit more than anyone ever thinks you can.